what you're doing for the fundraising is fantastic. I think it's obviously a fantastic cause, and anything that you can do to help is brilliant.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, like I say, it's basically just an engagement forum for fans to interact and fight this epidemic and also fight the boredom of obviously lockdown. I'm sure you've got your own thoughts on that.
Well, there's only so many vintage football matches you can watch, really, isn't there? It's great to relive some of these games and everything else, but it just shows you the power of live football, doesn't it? From the point of view that classic matches and classic incidents and all that kind of stuff are great, but there's nothing like being in the moment, is there? And I think we've talked about this before, but when I first got taken to Craven Cottage by my dad when I was a little boy, I don't remember the first game. I was that young. But that's the last time I was at Craven Cottage was in January, as I mentioned to you. No, it's beginning of February. Celebrating my dad's birthday with him, and that feeling you get when the boys run out onto the pitch, there's just nothing like it. I would say the hairs on my neck stand up, but I haven't got many hairs, so but it's just you can't put it into words, can you? And I don't think people that don't follow football maybe don't appreciate just how how amazing it is. When you're in those kind of moments.
Excuse me. Yeah. So there's a lot of fans who do travel to away games in sort of the respected lower leagues, Championship, League One, League Two, and obviously they have a decent following in the Premier League as well. But I don't think the fans are as passionate in the Premier League for the away support than there is in the lower leagues, from what I found anyway. I mean, like I say, when I met you guys at Blackburn, I interviewed the Fulham fans afterwards, and that was just a crazy video.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because as a displaced fan, living 200 miles from Craven Cottage, obviously the games I tend to get to are the away games rather than the home games, and I've been going and following Fulham now for 50 years, and you see the same people. I don't know these people by name, but I know them by sight. And it could be Tuesday night. It could be somewhere really far north, depths of winter. And these people are still there every single game. Supporting the club, and the passion is absolutely clear. But I think the problem, well, not problem, but the issue that you have in the Premier League is you get more tourists, you get more kind of neutrals, because people want to see obviously top flight football, don't they?
Yeah, true.
And when we were in the Premier League, we were selling out at the time. The ground held nearly 26,000 people, and we were pretty much selling out every game. And I'm sure that part of that was because Fulham tickets were reasonable prices, and people could come and see top flight football. And I'm biased, I know, but Craven Cottage is a bit of a special place. People do love it. Even away supporters always say it's a favourite ground because it's an old style ground. It's got picturesque settings. So yeah, it's hopefully we will get back there.
Yeah.
Whether it's going to be at the end of this season, a bit of a moot point.
I see Robert's joined. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Robert?
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. A little bit of technical issues. Couldn't get my volume on my laptop. I could hear you through my iPhone. Yeah, good to join you.
It's good to see you. Thanks for joining. Again, I spoke to Tim. Tim, were you together at Ewood Park when we were filming, or?
We were, but Rob had gone off to do something very important. He'd gone off to get our tickets. So
right, okay.
The chatting, Rob was meeting up with someone who very kindly sorted out some tickets for us. So yeah, that was an interesting game, and Mr. Mitrovic obviously showed his class, because it was just that one moment of brilliance that got us the 3 points. You know, because to be honest, it wasn't a vintage performance. Not, as a friend of mine used to say, not a classic. But we were delighted to walk away with the 3 points. You know.
So Robert, thanks for joining. If you'd like to tell the audience your background, because I know you have a very interesting history to tell.
Well, I've obviously played for Fulham in 2 spells, from 77 to 85, and then 87 to 89. I played 252 games for him, so it's always been I'm from Fulham. I was born there in Fulham itself. My family still lives in Fulham. My parents, or my mum does, and a lot of my family live in London, in and around Fulham and Putney and Rains Park and Wimbledon. So, yeah, it's always been very, very close to my heart, even though I have played for Huddersfield Town, Millwall, Luton Town, and Rotherham. So, but Fulham's always been my first club, and, you know, it's a club that it's the first result I look after, whatever I'm doing on a Saturday if I'm not watching them. But the last few years, me and my son Adam, he's 30 now, I brought him up to be a Fulham fan, and we've watched them a lot over the last 15, 18 years since I retired in 94.
Fair enough. Tim pointed me out to a particular game in 1983 away at Derby, the baseball ground. And I know it wasn't the result you was looking for. But watching that game, I've got a few questions, if you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, no problem.
What was your feeling, or what was your thought when the fan tried to tackle you in the corner flag?
Well, to be honest, I mean, previous 15 minutes of that, it started to get very intimidating when, you know, the gates were open clearly round the whole of the ground. Other than the Fulham end, well, obviously they were up in the upper tier. All my family were there. And yeah, that last 15 minutes became excruciating, unbearable, to be honest. Very intimidating. You know, the ball was on one side of the pitch and half the crowd on the other were nearly 15 yards inside the touchline. It was ludicrous, really. You know, obviously the incident in terms of the guy coming out of the crowd, as you can see clearly on the big match video footage, which we've all watched numerous times. I'm just running into the corner, you know, using my pace, which some of the lads said I didn't have much of. I did a little bit of a Cruyff turn, and next minute this guy launches one to the side of my thigh stroke bum. And as you can clearly see on the evidence, I did for split seconds think about going after him, because I point at him and sort of start to go towards him, and Ray Lewington stopped me, thank God. Otherwise it could have been worse. And then the referee ran over and he didn't know what to do. You know, I think he was like all the players, probably other than the Derby players, you know, for that last previous 10, 12 minutes, just didn't know what was happening. And I'm sure they didn't have earpieces and stuff like that in them days. It was his last game. He was retiring. You know, I went to all the league hearings afterwards. You know, we tried to replay the game. Obviously, if we had won, we would have got promoted. It were our own fault. We blew it 12 games before that. We were clearly sitting nicely in second, and the game against Leicester at home, you know, probably 8 or 9 games before that, clearly where we lost our way a bit. But so yeah, he admitted that the game finished 90 seconds early. So in theory, we should have got a replay, but we, you know, the league went against that. And consequently, we missed out on getting promotion to the first division, which it would have been. But we would have done well because we had a very good young side and a few experienced players in Tony Gale and Roger Brown. We had some great youngsters coming through in Paul Parker, Ray Houghton. So it would have been nice to pit our wits against the so-called first division boys at that time, but it wasn't to be. And, you know, I often think about it, but, you know, we blew it ourselves, really. We only got ourselves to blame.
Yeah. In terms of the current Fulham squad, and obviously the Fulham manager Scott Parker, would you have liked to have played with Scott Parker back in the day?
Yeah. Scott was very similar to the player I did play alongside in a lot of them games, Ray Lewington. Ray was a pivotal central midfield player that, you know, won the ball, got it, kept it simple, gave it to the flair players. And I think Scott throughout his career has done that. Not to say that he was comfortable himself, but he was that type of Ray Wilkins type player that kept it very simple, sideways, backwards, but very effective in a team pattern of game. And consequently, Scott went on to have a fantastic career in all the clubs he played for. So, some of the midfield players in our team, Tom Kearney, the current captain, he's a player that I would have liked to have played with, because he just keeps the ball for fun. And in this day and age, and even back in our day, we tried to play a football the way Malcolm McDonald and Ray Harford, God rest his soul, who was up at Blackburn with you guys. They instrumented that we wanted to play from the back and play football, and we did it back in the 83 days and 84 days. So it's more prevalent now, in terms of ball retention, and Fulham are very good at that, and that's one thing that has got us to where we are today. Unfortunately, we had a year in the Premiership where we came up against it because it's ruthless in that division, but we were going along nicely up until this current virus. So if we get the opportunity to try and overturn and maybe get into the second spot, if the playoffs, we don't know. No one knows really what's going to happen. We're all up in the air as to when we're going to see our next game of football live.
I mean, obviously the Dutch FA have cancelled the Dutch League quite recently. Do you think there's a possibility of the English FA doing the same thing if it goes on as?
There's always a possibility. Whatever decision they make is going to be very, it's not going to suit everyone. Whether it's the league's cancelled, whether Leeds and West Brom go straight up and there's no playoffs, or it's going to be tough on everyone from Liverpool winning the title down to someone possibly getting relegated or not getting promoted in the second division. So whatever the decision they make, it's going to be very difficult. I mean, ideally, I'd like to see the season finished. I think with the amount of games, 9-10 games that we've got left, you could fit that in a 3-week, 4-week period easy. Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, 3 weeks. The lads have had 6 weeks off, 8 weeks. We could get to finish this season. I think it's only right we do that. If it delays the following season, that we start in September, middle of September, or even late September, we've not lost anything. I think the logic is to finish this season as best we can, whether it's behind closed doors or whatever. That's the fairest way that everyone would be happy with. But the signs of the conference being cancelled, and it could have a knock-on effect, and that's probably why they're delaying the decision as long as they can, really, to see what restrictions we're going to be coming out within the next few weeks.
Yeah. Tim, would you like to explain to the viewers watching how long you follow Fulham? I see there's a retro shirt on your wall behind you there. So yeah, I'm assuming you've watched Fulham most of your life, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, as I mentioned to you when we met, Daniel, Rob and some friends in the club very kindly helped organise the celebrations for my dad's birthday, which I alluded to earlier on. So my dad's been following Fulham since 1937. He was 90 in January, so we organised a special day for him at the start of February. But he's the guy that is responsible for me following the club, because he's a Fulham boy, born and bred. He lived in Fulham, all of his life until we moved to the suburbs in the 60s, like a lot of people did. But when I was, I know Rob looks about 10 years younger than me, but we're actually at a similar age. And so I grew up, watching Fulham from, I think my first game must have been around about 1968. So, but I seem to remember the thing. I can't remember the actual game, but I seem to remember being very disappointed that Johnny Haynes wasn't playing, because I think he was injured. That's the sort of a memory I have. But I went through watching, some, shall we say, a fairly wide spectrum of quality with Fulham. I mean, obviously, in the 70s, we had the George Best, Rodney Marsh, Bobby Moore, those guys. And then, of course, people like Rob coming through. Gordon Davies, Ivor, the Welsh wizard, who's I still think Fulham's all-time leading goal scorer. People like And then obviously in the 90s, we had probably our lowest ebb really when we were in the bottom tier. And there was a famous game where I think we were second from bottom and Torquay were bottom, and we went to Torquay and we lost. So, we've seen some, a wide spectrum. And I think what's interesting about the club is they've always managed to keep that identity. As I mentioned to you, when we went to organise the, the surprise from the father, the way the club helped, the way that it was dealt with. We got to meet Scott Parker. We got to meet, obviously Rob came and met my dad. He'd never met Rob before, but we got to meet Gordon Davies as well. We got to meet Scotty Parker, Alexander Mitrovic, some of the other players, and I think that's my real, apart from being passionate about wanting them to do well, I just think that, it's a proper club, in the sense of it's never lost its identity, even through, the times when we were in the Premier League with Chairman Mo, Mohamed Al-Fayed running the club. It's still very much kept that, that kind of identity, and it's just a special thing for me, and just hoping to see the club carry on doing well.
Obviously, you got promoted to the Premier League a few seasons ago. I think I asked Tim the question on the video that unfortunately was not recording at the time at Ewood Park. You signed quite a lot of players, including Andre Schürrle at the time when you came up to the Premier League, and obviously it didn't work out. Do you think you've got the structure in place now at the club to make better decisions if you get promoted next time?
Well, I'd like to think so. I'd like to think that we learned from the errors that we made there. We famously spent a record amount, 100+ million on some players that didn't adapt to the Premier League and didn't meld with the rest of the team. And I think we made too many changes. Some of the people we brought in, I think, struggled to make their mark. The obvious ones being, Jean-Michel Seri. I mean, at one time, being trapped by, I think, Barcelona were interested.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And obviously came with a fantastic reputation. And Anguissa as well, another player that started to show, towards the end of his time with us, how good he could be, but he never kind of really made the impact at the time that we needed him to. If you look at the team that we've got and you say, how many people in that team could exist in the Premier League, I'd like to think it would be a good number of them. So with the right transfers, but not too many. I'd like to see us, re-establish ourselves, because I think we can.
Robert?
It's that old difficult first season.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's getting through the first season, which unfortunately last time round we didn't manage to do.
Yeah. Robert, your thoughts?
I think Tim's right. The experience that we learned in that sort of 12 months in the Premiership, we were wrong to invest in 100 million in 12 players. 5 or 6 of them came in on deadline day. 4 or 5 weeks into the training pre-season. Language barriers in terms of some of them wasn't fluent in English. The inflated transfer prices for Seri and Anguissa. It just and they flitted in and out, and it was just too much of a. And to be honest, I think a lot of it wasn't Slav's fault, the manager, because a lot of the signings were done without his know-how. We had a policy within the scouting system that a tiered system in terms of that, they had to be under 25 or 26, I think, and had to do this, that, and the other. So it was out of Slav's hand, and he never really gave the lads who had got us to the Premiership from the Championship. Some of them just got pushed to the side, and never really got the starting look in that they should have deserved. Johansson, McDonald, people like that had got us there. Some of them were just pushed aside, and I thought that was wrong. And it, as the season went on, obviously it got worse, and defeats came after defeats, and draws and defeats, and And eventually, obviously, Slav went and Scott came in for them last 4 or 5 games, and we showed a little bit more pride and finished the season a little bit stronger than we knew we'd all underachieved. Obviously, we cleared the decks in the summer, getting rid of some of them on big wages. Some of them are only out on loan, so technically they're still our players. The current crop have come back. People like Johansson, McDonald have come back and graced the Championship. That may be their level. They may not be good enough to step up to Premiership. But to be honest, I didn't think there wasn't given a very good opportunity or chance at the beginning of that last season. So, we've been, again, this season's been hit and miss. We haven't been as fluent as West Brom or Leeds because the league table doesn't lie. They've been a little bit more consistent than us. So although they both had dips round about December through to February, which gave us an opportunity to claw back some points. And we were hanging on to their coattails until recently. And then obviously West Brom have started to extend away. And if I was honest, them two probably deserve to go up, if I was completely honest. And yeah, I would expect us, if we do finish the season, to finish strongly like we did the season before last and go into the playoffs as the form team. And we know what it takes to win 3 games, and if that's what it has to take, that's what we have to do.
I've had this slight debate with a few of my pals now. Do you think teams these days are susceptible to get rid of their managers for big name managers? Because obviously Slaven Bilic before Scott Parker, with his pedigree, you could argue.
Ivanovic, you mean?
Oh, sorry,
Ivanovic,
yeah. With his pedigree, you think he should survive at Premier League level. And obviously, you come back to Scott Parker, which he knows the Premier League, he knows the ins and outs of the league. Do you think?
Yeah, I think Slav was a bit naive. Although as the season started and we didn't start well and it got progressively worse, he still continued to try and play the Fulham way and try to play out from the back, and we were making the same mistakes week after week and getting punished in the Premiership. You make a mistake, and we've done it this season in the Championship. We're trying to play out the back as Scott does. Scott's philosophy is very similar to Slav's, but in the Premiership they were ruthless and we were getting punished, and goals were going in fairly early in games. The lads were demoralised. You could see it in their body language, and he just didn't have that plan B. And I think for him to keep his job and try and make more of a go like we did in the Premiership, I think he needed to change his ways as a manager, which I don't think he did. He was very regimented in how he wanted to play, whether we were going to go down or not. And at the end of the day, that cost him his job. And Scott was very, very similar, and he's very similar this season, that even when we went through our sticky period, he will continue. Because I know firsthand, because I've got some people behind the scenes, that he drums into them no matter however we're playing, or if we're 1 down or 1 up, or we just continue to do the same things that they do in, week out, day in, day out, and he doesn't change from that. He has mixed it up a little bit as the season's gone on. I think he's slowly introduced a sort of plan B where we can get it up to Mitrovic a bit earlier than we can, instead of missing out Tom and some of the midfield players. Because if we get it up to him, he's one of the best in the division at holding the ball up and bringing people into play. So I think he has learnt a bit this season as he's gone on, Scott, which I don't think Slav did in the Premiership season.
Do you think Mitrovic is a Premier League striker? Think he can cut it in the Prem? I know you signed from Newcastle, but
yeah, if I were honest, I think he could be for his goals in the Championship. But if I watched him, I watch him every week, obviously, and sometimes he frustrates me. If I was his manager, I'd want more out of him. I don't think he gives us enough sometimes in terms of his work rate. I know sometimes he's isolated. I think he'd be a middle to bottom 6 type player. He's not going to be a top 6 player. He hasn't got the pace to get behind people. Yeah, he can hold it up. But if I were honest, yeah, a middle, a middle team, an Everton type team, West Ham, you know what I mean? He's never going to be top 6. So his goals ratio is fantastic in the Championship. Like you say, he had a spell in the Premiership with Newcastle, but he was a bit younger, a bit hot-headed. I think he's calmed down now, and I think he's much more mature. So I think whatever opportunity he gets, whether it's with us or with another club in the Premiership, I'm sure he'll grace it quite well.
Do you think it'd work better in a 2, or do you think it'd just be fine on his own in a 1?
Yeah, no, I think he can play both. I mean, we've not played 2-2 very often. I mean, obviously we play 4-3-3 or 4-1-2, usually up there on his own with the license with the two wide players to come inside. But yeah, I'd like to see him. Not many teams play 4-4-2 nowadays, as you well know, in any division. Well, not in the first, the Championship and the Premiership. It's not. That's not the in thing to do as a flat two up there. But yeah, I think if you've got midfield players or a number 10 that can support him quick to get the ball off him once he's holding on to it and bringing people into play, then yeah, I think you could work the system to his game plan.
Cool. Obviously, putting the stream together today because of the COVID-19 epidemic. How are you coping? Is that your family okay?
Unfortunately, as Tim Wells knows, I mean, I've got to sing the praises of the NHS because my wife has only just come out of hospital last week after spending 7 days critically ill, and she was positive. She got discharged last Wednesday, so she's been at home here for 8-9 days now. So she's doing well. It's a slow process. She was in Barnsley Hospital, and yeah, it was tough because I couldn't see her. I wasn't allowed to see her. So yeah, it's been a tough 2 weeks.
Oh, jeez.
So I can support the NHS, proudly.
Sad to hear that. Really sad to hear that, Robert. I mean, if people watching, obviously the links in the scroller, at the bottom of the video, on our Just Giving page, if you like to give to the NHS and give you support. Tim, is your family okay? Is everything okay over there?
Yes. My parents are both still with us, and Dad's 19, Mum's in her 80s. So obviously, it's a great concern, particularly as I'm 200 miles away, so I can't see them. Fortunately, both my sisters are close by, so they're getting everything they need in terms of supplies and everything else. But yeah, it's just a really frightening time from the point of view that this is an illness that is no respecter of anything, is it? So anyone can get it. I think when it kicked off, everyone was saying, well, it's only people of a certain age that are going to be affected. But as we've seen, it's affected lots of different people, from children, to older people. And of course, the really sad part of it is, the amount of people, NHS workers, who've unfortunately succumbed as well. These people are putting themselves, really in the front line. I mean, obviously, all the frontline workers need to be applauded, but the healthcare professionals, particularly, I mean, they are just so exposed, and without getting political, we just need to do everything we can to protect them as much as we can. But yeah, it's fortunately it's not touched us directly, but I know people who have been affected, and it's it's scary.
Yeah, the first guy we had on today, Nathan, Wigan supporter. He's a nurse in the NHS. I think him and his girlfriend or wife is battling the front line at the same time. So yeah, I'll be out to the NHS, and it's tough times indeed. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. I do appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
Thanks for coming on and talking to us. I'm sure we'll meet up at some point when I get down to Craven Cottage and see you after a game. If God and pray football comes back at some point.
I think it might be a while.
Just a big Daniel. Just a big shout out to all the fans that are tuning in. As you said, the Just Giving page. It is as we've just rightly said, the NHS. I think it's a fantastic service they're doing, from the tea lady to the cleaner to the doctors, nurses, and everyone. And like you say, wherever the football world usually comes together in terms of trying to support charities. And I think as much as the media's been hyping up the NHS, I think we all should get behind there and just try and support them and give as much or as little as we can, and just make sure that we recognise the jobs that all these guys, girls are doing.
Yeah, I mean, again, everyone uses the word unprecedented, and I suppose it is because it's obviously never happened before. But again, if people follow the guidelines, and I know it's tough with obviously the weather being as it is right now. It's quite nice. It's a change from the winter. It's hard not to go out, but Just
No,
restrain
you have
yourselves.
to stay in at stage lives. I mean, we all know that. I'm first hand. You know, we have to do it. Otherwise, we're not going to get through this. We all want to get back to doing what we normally do, and the quicker we all stick to the guidelines, you say, when the weather and with weekends come along, people are just starting to flout the rules a bit. You know, you're reading on the news and social media. We can't do it. We'll just be back to square one again.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It's as you say, strange times we're living in, but the sooner we get on top of this, and the sooner that the testing and the vaccines are available, you know, until then, I don't think we're going to see normality as we might think of it. You know, I think the problem is that people have got this idea that once social distancing becomes relaxed, we're all just going to go back to how it was, and I think we're a long way from that.
Yeah, I think Glenn Fowler, who came on after Nathan, he lives in China, in Hangzhou, not 450 miles away from where the epidemic started, in Wuhan, and they were, the police were out straight away testing people. Everyone was regimented. It was, you know, it was like a military operation. Whereas as people here, it's been a case of, yeah, it'll be all right, it'll be okay. You know, the British sort of thinking, it'll be okay. But obviously, I mean, again, not to get political, but I think Boris could have done something quite quicker than what he did. But again, it's ifs, buts, and maybes, and it's a testing ground.
It's a tough one.
But again, thanks for joining. I appreciate your time.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Thanks for joining, and thanks for inviting us on. Nice to see you, Tim. And yeah, hopefully we'll catch up once the season starts.
Most definitely. Thank you.
Look forward to that.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
Cheers, Tim. Cheers, Daniel.
Bye bye.